Okay, we're ready to call the meeting, the Design Review Board to order. Have roll call, please, Dean, when you're available.
Start with the calling of the roll. Board Member Noonan. Board Member Kitchen.
Here.
Board Member Helzer. Board Member Butler.
He's here.
Sorry, here.
And Chair Martins.
Present.
Okay, that gives us a quorum of 3 of the 5 members present, and so we have a quorum to conduct today's business. I would ask Margie to confirm that the Kansas Open Meetings Act has required notice has been provided of today's meeting.
Yes, I can confirm that the packet was posted and the required notice of today's meeting was provided.
So that allows us to move on to our regular business, including next consideration of the minutes. So,
Okay, yes, ready for approval of the June 10th regular meeting minutes. Are there any changes, additions, comments about the minutes from anybody? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve as presented.
I so move.
Okay, Katie moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Caden seconded. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes approved. All right, then, we're down to new business, item 3.1.
item 3.1 this afternoon is an application filed by Kevin Romey on behalf of the Paramount Bar. And the request before you is the approval of a sidewalk cafe license agreement to allow a fenced-in outdoor dining area to be established on a public sidewalk in front of the Paramount Bar. The Paramount Bar is addressed as 219 North Santa Fe and is located on the west side of North Santa Fe, north of Ash Street. You have an application in your packet and some supporting materials. Those supporting materials include a certificate of liability insurance, a food service license, and then copies of receipts from food and liquor sales. And so, as we noted on page 1 of our staff report, in order to have a complete license agreement application, we need a signed application, the application fee, a copy of a Kansas food establishment license, certificate of liability insurance, copy of retail sales and alcoholic beverage sales, a site plan indicating the proposed location for the outdoor dining area, information about outdoor furniture, and information about the fence. Just to clarify, in order to be eligible for a sidewalk dining area, business must have a food service license, and it must have at least 30% of their gross sales receipts must be from food. So if you are a pure bar that has no kitchen or no food service, that type of business is not allowed to have a sidewalk serving area, but the Paramount Bar meets the requirements by having a food establishment license. Your role this afternoon is to conduct a public hearing on the Sidewalk Cafe application and make a recommendation to the Salina City Commission that the proposed sidewalk dining area would conform or it would not conform with the city's Sidewalk Cafe license requirements. So one of the things that we have done is we have summarized for you on page 2 and 3 of the report the background of previous cases that have come before the board, and one of those occurred in 2006 when an outdoor patio at the rear was approved, and then in 2019 there was an application that was reviewed twice dealing with facade renovations. And so there was a preliminary approval that was granted in March of 2019. And then in May of 2019, the board received some additional detail about that. And so There was information provided to the board about the corrugated metal covering for the canopy, the ceramic tile for the front wall that was going to be below the countertop, and a paint swath for the stucco and storefront trim. And so on page 3, the changes that you approved were the removal of existing wood and glass storefront and replacement with a new bronze storefront, or a new bronze aluminum and glass storefront with the entrance door shifted to the south from the center, covering of the exterior facade with stucco and wood trim, installation of a new overhead door, and installation of reddish and gray colored ceramic tile below the countertop bar, and the removal of the existing canopy and approval of a bronze corrugated metal awning on a frame, essentially on a modified canopy frame. And so many of the conditions that we had on that was to make clear that the approval of the overhead door and the approval of the countertop bar top did not allow for consumption or sale on a public sidewalk. The only way that that can occur is through approval of a sidewalk cafe license agreement by the City Commission. So the proposal that's before you is to establish a 10 by 16 fenced-in sidewalk dining area on the sidewalk along North Santa Fe. So one of the things we noted is, as a board and a staff, we're supposed to do more or less a step-by-step review of the basic physical characteristics of the dining area. So we'll start with the site plan layout. And the plan that's proposed there extends out 10 feet 7 inches from the face of the building, and it would be 16 feet 4 inches in length. Just by way of comparison, the storefront frontage for Paramount Bar is 24.6 feet, and so at 16 feet 4 inches, it would occupy about 2/3 of the frontage. The plan shows a seating area with 5 seats at a countertop bar facing the overhead door, and then 3 tables with 2 chairs apiece, so it'd be a total seating capacity of 11 seats. The square footage proposed is approximately 165 square feet. One of the things we wanted to note is that this particular plan extends out a little over 2 feet farther than most of the other dining areas downtown, and as such, that would put the fence posts in the ornamental brickwork instead of the concrete. And so we just wanted to point out that the other establishments that the board had reviewed had dining areas that extended out in the 8 to 8.5 foot range. As far as the enclosure, the proposal is to install a 3-foot tall cedar fence to act as a perimeter of the area, and under Walker Plaza was reduced from 6. And so the sale and consumption of alcohol would only occur within that fenced-in area. The fence would be 3 feet tall, have 4x4 cedar posts, and a 4x4 top rail that would be cedar, and then it would be the metal, unfinished metal bars would serve as the posts. And one of the things we wanted to note is that all the other sidewalk dining perimeter fences downtown are, and the second, it's on top of the sidewalk surface that's flush with the paving, and to staff to be metal chairs that would be placed at the bar, and then there would be heavy-duty metal tables with a solid elm wood top. The tables would be 40 inches tall. One of the things that we would like clarified is it appeared that this was the type of chair that would be put at the bar. It was not clear whether those chairs would be used as the tables as well, or as whether there's different chairs for the tables. The other item that was included in your packet is catalog cut sheets for umbrellas, but it's not clear if or where those umbrellas would actually be used. There's no proposal to put any specialty lighting in this area that we have seen. You may have quiet background Miago, and they ended up not building their sidewalk dining area. Didn't see any plans to modify that. There is the certificate of liability insurance, and then essentially the approval is good for a year, and then there's an annual renewal. And some of the things you're supposed to consider is whether you find that the plan submitted will comply with all the applicable provisions of the ordinance, whether you think the dining area will contribute to the vibrancy and appeal of the downtown area, whether you think the dining areas proposed would cause any injury to neighboring properties, and then whether the location and size of the dining area, will that impede pedestrian traffic in the vicinity. And so, as we have reviewed this, the gate, and the purpose of that is so that the employee deliveries under the supervision of an employee, but as object the cut sheets that we received. And then we would like clarification of whether the same types of chairs will be used at the bar and at the tables. And then the other item is to clarify whether tabletop umbrellas are being proposed. As we looked at this in relation to the other locations downtown, with the metal canopy and with the building blocking the afternoon and evening sun, we've seen interest from buildings that are located on the east side of Santa Fe to have umbrellas to shade the sun, but we don't see much of a need for umbrella license. You could make a recommendation to approve a sidewalk cafe license, 10 potential other sidewalk dining areas, convenience for patrons or to be used by patrons. It was put in because if you have a fire inside the bar, you don't want to have people in the patio be forced to go back into the building to exit in a fire.
But just, again, I'm just getting clarification, but to have it left open as far as city code goes, other than the fact of how it was approved initially,
Yes.
but city code goes, is there a requirement that has to be shut off, closed off? No. Okay.
It's not, it's a discretionary decision.
Okay.
What it does is it puts the onus back on the bar owner,
Right.
who's then responsible if patrons at this bar, if they order drinks and leave through the gate and don't pay, if minors consume alcohol, if people take beverages outside, then it becomes a licensing issue but there's no city code that requires that
Okay.
gate be shut. It was just, because it was only put in as a fire safety measure, it was equipped with the same hardware that the one at the Speakeasy one, which also was required for sign code
Yeah.
or fire code purposes.
And I definitely can see the practicality or the reasoning behind it. You know, I get that. I just wanted to make sure understanding. Go ahead, Katie.
I do have a question, a follow-up question. So in removing that condition,
Katie, could you state what you've said so far, because it's been kind of,
liability or
it's kind of wobbly and cutting in and out.
yeah.
I heard a little bit, but not. Don't hear.
Okay. Do we have to, if we wanted to remove the condition, do we have, does that?
Katie, you're cutting out really bad. I'm not really getting.
Need to reconnect.
Sorry, maybe you might try, yeah, Dean just said maybe reconnect.
Says her network bandwidth goes
Uh,
slow.
Yeah, so while we're waiting for, did anybody else have any comments as pertaining to the rear patio? Comments or questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to anticipate her question, but in the action that the board took in 2006, the condition placed on it by the design review board at their meeting was that the outdoor patio gate will be reserved for deliveries, taking trash to the dumpster, and emergency exiting only. Patrons using the patio would enter and exit through the Paramount Bar building.
Right.
So that was a condition that was placed on it by the design review board. That condition has not been fully observed, but it is within the discretion of this board to modify or repeal that condition if you think it doesn't serve a purpose. But that was a condition that was placed on that. The other thing is that the access to that gate actually doesn't go to the alley, it goes on to another adjoining property. And so at the time, there was a written agreement that was obtained that allowed people exiting the patio gate to go onto the adjacent private property because the gate actually doesn't enter directly to the alley. You exit the gate and go onto private property.
Is it the property that the parking lot's on, or is that?
The
Oh, no, it's the
property's
building next
behind
to it, yeah.
the former Wasco Law Office, but it's still the Mid-Kansas title
Yeah.
that's in that building. So I think we had some photographs and some things in the packet, Dustin, that showed that.
Yeah.
So I don't
So-
know if Katie tried to rejoin us or.
I am here. Can you hear me now?
Oh, great,
Yes.
yes, wonderful. Go ahead and ask your question.
My question was, if we want to make a motion or do something with the condition, does that need to be separate from the application that's in front of us?
Yeah, that would be a separate motion from taking action on the front dining area. So that condition was approved by a majority of board members in 2006. It's carried forward to today. If today the board wants to repeal or modify that condition, you can do that with a majority vote, but it would be a separate vote or action from any action taken on the proposed sidewalk dining area.
Okay. Is this an acceptable time? We can invite the applicant to discuss this matter, or should we wait till further down the line?
Is there any other questions from board members about staff's report or any of our drawings?
Well, yeah, I had some more on the rest of the
Okay.
application, but I just.
But if we want to speak to the rear patio portion or whatever you want to take that, but we could hear from the applicant and then see if there's additional questions that result from that from
Okay.
the board members.
Dean, just real quick, I did want to touch on one thing you mentioned and make sure I understand correctly. Are you saying that gate exits directly onto the adjoining landowner's property, or is there a tract or path there that still is on the applicant's property where people could come in and out?
No, the fence is on the property line, and the minute you step through the gate, you're stepping onto private property that's owned by the adjacent owner to the south. And so what Dustin's showing there is that paved area there. It's been used for parking by employees that are in the title company and other areas there, but that belongs to that building owner, and we required that it wasn't to the level of an easement, but basically we have on file a written agreement from that owner that patrons that are exiting through that gate, or if there are deliveries that are going through that gate, or trash is being taken out through that gate, that employees or patrons of Paramount may enter onto that adjoining private property to get out or to bring deliveries in or take trash to the dumpster.
And that agreement's still in effect?
Yeah, it's the same owner, and we have it on file. It wasn't done to, you could make an argument that it maybe should have done to the level of an access easement or easement, but that's what was done at the time, and Bob Wasco, who was a real estate attorney, is the one that executed that, and he was comfortable with that at the time.
Do you know if it has that same restriction in it that the board put on the gate as far as when it could be used, or is it?
Oh, I believe that it was granted under the belief that it would be limited use, that it was, at the time that they signed it, they knew the limitations that the board had put on the use of that it was going to be used for trucks making deliveries, for employees taking trash out to the dumpster, which is in the parking lot to the south, and that it would be used in emergency situations. But I don't think when they signed it, it was with the expectation that patrons to the Paramount would enter and exit through that gate as if it were the front door.
Okay, but as far as you know, it's not specifically written in?
It's not specifically
Okay.
prohibiting that. It was
But
just
it's just-
based on that understanding, because they were in attendance at the design review board meeting.
Right, right.
Do you know if that adjoining landowner, outside of the general public notice, were they specifically notified of this?
They weren't notified of this. They were notified of the application for a sidewalk dining license and information. They were not notified that staff would or might bring up the conditions on the approval of the rear patio.
No.
After these questions, Caden's questions, and this information, I actually would be in favor of restating the condition at this point, unless there's a access easement or something with the neighbors, because I think that information has brought more to light on its use and its intended purpose. And I think it should be reinstated unless a different agreement was reached with their neighbor.
Yeah, and I don't recall the specifics at the time, that there was some viewed benefit in the design. Obviously, we didn't want to have a gate swinging open into the alley and obstructing the alley. So the gate was put on the south side with the understanding that the gate would enter onto that, swing onto and enter onto that private property. And so the board put a condition on that written permission had to be obtained from the property owner to the south, and that was done after the design review board had approved the plan for the patio.
Okay. Would the property owner or representative like to address this at all? If so, you need to come up to the, and identify, you don't have to, but you'd like to, just on talking about this, just state your name and address, I guess.
Kevin Romey, 219 North Santa Fe, Paramount Bar.
Okay.
The patio entrance has always been, from day one, a problem, because people just swing over the door, hit the deal, roll right in. So at that point, it really did, no good to even have it like that, just leave it wide open. And also, my neighbors come and eat lunch there probably 2 to 3 times a week. A lot of city commissioners always rolled over after their meetings. They rolled through the back door, same thing. So at that point, it was just, it's kind of pointless to try to lock it and keep it locked at all times, so. And in previous years for pub crawls, my neighbors let me use that patio area and gave me permission as well to extend our patio over for alcohol sales and porta potties there. I don't think there'll be any problem if they need any more in writing for this to go. I mean, that walkway right there, before there was a patio, people walked there for years. I mean, it's a sidewalk right from the chamber parking lot, or city parking lot, you know, that they rolled right through. So that pathway has been used probably since the day the bar's been there, so.
Have you heard from the alcohol bureau?
I've never had anything
Okay.
sent to me from the ABC,
Okay,
and they usually let me know if there's any problems, by God, so.
okay.
It's always after St. Patrick's Day, and that's when I get contacted, so. by
During special
ABC,
events
who-
like that.
They're out watching on that day, and then they report back to city staff what they observed and the violations they observed, so it's not, I don't go looking for it, it goes looking for me, so.
Okay,
And also, on that St. Patty's Day, we were told, which I knew wasn't right, that they could take their drinks out onto the sidewalk. So it wasn't just my place, it was every place downtown, people were rolling out. And, you know, we got to put the blame on all of us, not just one.
okay.
So, you know, since then, on pub crawls or whatever, I have people posted at each door
Okay.
and each entrance trying to keep it all contained, so.
Okay. Do you by chance on the inside have a sign saying, you know, no alcohol permitted past this point or anything
Oh,
like
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And as far as other patios in town, I mean, the Hideaway, you can walk in any direction. You can drive a car on that one, it's big enough to walk through. You know, Hank's, Chuck's, all have outside entrances rolling on to them, so.
So,
Yeah, the ABC issue, ABC has a job to do. They, if they think that there's a violation, they have recourse. You have your duties as a licensee as far as what keeps you in compliance or what makes you non-compliant. So I think that's ABC's issue to deal with, and your obligation to stick to the rules of alcohol service, but I'm generally, I would be fully in favor of this door being, or gate being used throughout the business day. My one concern is that I'm hesitant to approve that access where I know that it's going to require or result in people crossing the neighbor's private property without them having the opportunity to at least weigh in on this. If it's covered and within the terms of the agreement between you and the neighbor, then I don't think I'd have any issue with it. But without knowing that, without knowing what their position is, I think it's something they need to have the opportunity to weigh in on. That's where I'm at on it right now.
Well, this board could lift that restriction from the board's perspective, subject to obtaining consent for that from the neighboring owner to the south, and then staff would reach out to them and attempt to obtain that. But if you want to adjust that condition and make it contingent on the consent of the owner to the south, then staff would reach out to them and attempt to get that consent and then report back to you.
okay.
I'm comfortable with option one that you said of, I can, if I need to make a motion for that we would remove the restriction contingent that staff receives a affirmation from the property owner next door that they are okay with that.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Again, allowing the removal of that restriction dependent upon the neighbor's approval or consensus. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right.
So what we will do is we will contact them, then we will provide a written confirmation of your action at today's meeting. What that allows us to do is we have an approval letter in the file from the 2006 Design Review Board with that condition, and essentially with that action that you took, you have removed the restriction on use of the rear gate contingent on the adjacent property owner's consent. And so then that allows us to document that condition that was on the 2006 action has been lifted. So that our job is to try to enforce what previous boards have imposed, but
Right.
that's why we wanted to bring it up this evening, because we thought this board should have an opportunity to have a different view of it, given that a lot of time has transpired since 2006. And they were dealing with a patio that wasn't there yet and trying to anticipate things, and you're dealing with a patio that's been in use for 15 years, so.
All right, thank you. So now we'll move on down to the actual application matters with that.
Yeah, our two main concerns on that is just the fact that there's a bar and then there's only 3 tables, and we would feel more comfortable if the extent of the fenced-in area was pulled back to line up with the concrete ornamental brickwood divide, which is a little over 8 feet, and that's consistent with Old Chicago and Martinelli's on that, what was approved on that side of the street. And so, and the other thing is the type of anchoring system. And so those are the 2 main concerns that we have about the sidewalk dining area.
I do have a question about it. On the rebar or the fencing, will that have a tendency to rust and leave rust marks on the sidewalk? To me, it looks like unfinished or unsealed, I don't know what to call it, but, you know, I've seen metal like that and then leave all kinds of staining on cement or other structures.
Yeah, it didn't appear to be finished to staff, but as we wanted to call that out, and I think that might be a better question for the applicant or their architect, is we're not, all of the other fencing that we have downtown is, and I don't think it's necessarily that it's not designed for outdoor use or weather protected, but if it's not powder coated or anything like the other fences downtown, so I don't think staff can project whether that is, maybe it's intended to rust naturally and to have that rustic look, so we would defer that question to the applicant or their architect.
So would one or both of you like to step up, either way?
Yeah, it comes in rusted, and then we put a clear coat over it.
So it'll be sealed, basically?
We
Prevent
sealed it
the
up, yeah.
running of rust and stuff, right? Okay.
So,
Do you know, is it, you said you're using the large anchors, and it looks pretty substantial, but,
honestly, I wasn't for sure what they're putting in there. I figured it's the same as what everybody else was rolling into their concrete, you know, so
okay.
if that's an issue,
I think it's your architect behind you?
Yep.
Or designer, somebody?
Doing, I'm John Hamm with A+ Architect and Construction Service, 356 North Santa Fe. The intent with the anchors, we don't have to use those types of anchors. We can use a Hilti screw, which does the same thing. What we tried to do is maximize the amount of people we can get in there and still be within that 200 square foot, which is the city codes. We're at 165. The codes say that we have to be 6 feet, and we're 6 feet. And just because we're a little bit into the brick pavers, I mean, Martinelli's, their entire fence along the east side is in the brick pavers, a few inches. And to me, as aesthetically, I'd rather have anchors in brick pavers, because the beauty of brick pavers, you can pull them up and put new one down, whereas if it's in the concrete and everything's removed, you got holes in the concrete.
But again, is the type of anchor versus it sounded like what maybe it's proposed, and I don't know much about this, the anchor bolts versus the masonry?
Sure,
like
it could be anything. I mean, I only put anchor bolts in there because that's
Okay,
typical what you do in concrete. But it could be a Hilti screw, which is a lot narrower.
or it's still, and not
Exactly.
result in integrity or the
Exactly,
stability?
yep.
Okay, so it'd still be stable? Okay. Yeah, I had noticed that Martinelli's fence is in the brick.
Right,
there,
and just
too.
because we're maybe, and I don't know if we are bigger than other people, and if we are, I don't know that that's even relevant. We're within the standards, and that's what we tried to design for.
Right. Right, because there's still like over 5 feet of pathway.
6 feet, yeah,
6 feet, okay.
6 feet to the back of the curb.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any questions for the architect or design here at the moment while he's up here, or?
Oh, I will answer one of the other things that was brought up about the bar top. Right now, it's just left pine, and part of the original permit
Yeah.
was going to be, is a concrete bar top.
Okay.
And the reason they left it that way is to finish it off.
So once this gets approved, then you'll finish off and probably have it
Off without the approval.
and stick out that way it'll stick out like a regular bar top?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that answers that question. Does anybody else have any questions for the architect or Kevin, the owner? If
Well,
not,
I do have a question. So, it was pointed out in this time that, the design is in the pavers as, potentially negative. But as you said, Martinelli's, and this is probably maybe for Dean, Martinelli's is located across the pavers. Is there a reason why it was pointed out in this circumstance and maybe not in the other, or why was the decision made at Martinelli's versus this location?
The sidewalks downtown are 16 feet wide from face of building to back of curb for the most part. And the width of Martinelli's is 8.5 feet. And so the supports for its fence, which again, it's a flange type system, so what they have is they just have a flat metal flange that sits on top of the brick. And so it's not any kind of stakes that are bored into the brick, but it's 8 feet 6 inches wide, and it has more tables and seating capacity than this is proposing, and this is 10 feet 7 inches. And so since the old Chicago was 8.5 feet, and Martinelli's was 8.5 feet, and there's not another one that extends out this far into the sidewalk, and there's only 3 tables, we couldn't see what the need was to extend out 10 feet 7 inches when the other ones only extend out 8 feet and a half.
Well, if we could put more tables in there, we would, and more people.
okay, reading that, that's not in your application, I get that, Dean.
There's not an occupant load, that
Okay.
what is, it's based on, do you have enough room for people to be able to safely maneuver around the tables and back in and out? But the difference is that Martinelli's doesn't have a bar top or anything, so their tables are pushed up against the wall of the restaurant. But with 3 two-person tables, that's only 6 diners, and we couldn't see a reason to have over 10 and a half feet extending out into the sidewalk to accommodate 3 two-person tables.
Well, you gotta admit, there's 5 chairs up against the bar top also. So I allowed 15 square foot per person. That's how I came up, calculated, the 3 tables plus the chairs up against the overhead the door. So there's plenty of room for people to maneuver around.
Would the capacity change at all by just moving it, a foot in, so it's not in, or, 18 inches, whatever it is, and it's no longer on the design?
Well, we'd have to come in 2 feet if we're out off the pavers. And that calculates, if you do 15 square foot per person, 9 people as opposed to 11 people. And just because I'm showing 11 people, I just showed it by code, but you can't, I don't know how you control whether people, I don't think there's anybody that's going to be up there saying, okay, there's 12 people here, get out. I mean, maybe they will, I don't know, but that's just the way I designed it to try to, if we could maximize the more people in there, that's fine.
And is 15 feet that you mentioned per person, that's kind of a, I don't know, industry standard or something? Is there?
Well, I just got into the code book and kind of looked
That's
somewhat,
kind of where they-
somewhat similar, because it does,
Okay.
I couldn't find anything in the code that says, okay, for outside dining, you can have
Right.
this many people per square foot. So I just figured 15 is plenty. You can get in there with a wheelchair and have the 5-foot diameter turning radius. I mean, that's why the way I designed it.
For handicap,
Because
okay.
if we start moving it in 2 feet, it's going to prohibit somebody in a wheelchair to maneuver properly per the 5-foot typical diameter.
I think what bothers me is that it's laying on top of the, Art Deco or the inset. I don't think I would be as bothered by it if it was on the kind of standard pavers that are kind of flowing all the way across versus kind of the artistic pieces that are inset in it. So is there, would it make that much of a difference to split the difference? I want to try to be accommodating, but I also think the city spent a lot of money to put the design in, and then to cover it with a long rail and fencing just seems a little counterintuitive.
Sure, yeah, I could move that back towards the west so that the outside edge of the railing would be in line with the decorative, the different color, I guess, pavers. And by that, he's still probably going to be able to maintain the correct number of people that we want. I mean, we're not talking a whole lot.
Did you guess half of a foot? I don't have any idea. Looking at this picture, I'm just guessing how far that'd be in.
I went out there this morning and put some 4x4 disc out there and kind of seen where it was at. And yeah, it's right. It's on pretty much right on the edge of the decorative, the lighter. But if I shoved it further to the west, we're not losing any people. I mean, we're losing a little square footage, but
not.
it's,
Okay.
if that's what you want, and if that's what we need to do to get this approved, we will. I mean, we're not talking a whole lot of less square footage.
Dean, did you say of the restaurants or establishments that serve alcohol, all of them that have been approved for the sidewalk cafe, they are at 8.5, or is that?
Nothing is fixed downtown, but for, yes, the Martinelli's where the rail's actually out there, but for the most part, the sidewalk dining goes out to the dividing line between the concrete paving and the brickwork. I've got a chart that's not here in your packets, but the only ones that are substantially, the one that's at Yaya's is over 200 square feet because it's a lot longer north to south. It's not this wide east to west, and then you have one on the plaza behind Barolo Grill, and it's much larger than 200 square feet, but you don't have the concern about the path of travel or the ornamental brickwork in that plaza back there.
Here's the other thing I will say with the Martinellis, it's not quite as heavy visually of a structure, and this is just speaking aesthetically. It doesn't seem to interrupt the design as much as I see this one interrupting it, and that's partly why I think moving it back to at least not cover the insets would be helpful, just because it is kind of a heavier structure in the sense visually on it. So.
And right now, as designed, is it, am I reading this correct, 10 feet, 7.5?
It's 10 feet, 7 inches as we read it. And so some of our reports and some of our drawings, we have to go back and forth between, sometimes we're given it in tenths of feet and sometimes we're given it in inches. And so even staff can get mixed up of whether we're dealing with tenths of feet or inches, but as we read the plans, it looked like it extended out 10 feet, 7 inches from the face of the building.
So you're saying you could set it back, so I think is that called a chevron? What is that pattern? Do you know? Is that,
Yeah, it's not a chevron. I'm not
okay,
sure
well-
what pattern it is, but.
okay,
it's
so the
just
Santa Fe
the
pattern, I'm
lighter-
looking for, yeah.
Yeah, it's the lighter pavers.
Lighter pavers. So you said for your purposes, it wouldn't materially take away from your space if you set it back away from the light pavers, the design pavement, plus maybe, a little bit of a spacing, so it's just not right on it. But if you had like that plus maybe a brick's worth, so it's kind of, so you can see the design, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so that I'm understanding, and what I heard her say is that the outside of the railing, or the far west end of or the east end of the railing, will be in line with the lighter brick pavers.
Okay.
But the part of the fence would still be in the darker, and we could use a Hilti structural screw as opposed to an anchor bolt.
Okay.
What's the measurement to the edge of that concrete from the building?
It's, as Dustin can correct me, but it's right at a little over 8 feet from and it's fairly consistent downtown, but the faces of buildings are set back different ways, but it's essentially from the face of the building to the curb is 16 feet for most of the streetscape, and the 8 feet next to the building is the solid concrete, and that line, it's not completely uniform, but it's in the 8 foot to 8 foot 2 to 3 inches range, nothing beyond that in terms of the concrete that extends from the face of the building. And then you've got the ornamental part, and then you've got concrete up next to the curb. So that's the measurement that we took when we went out and we're trying to prepare our report.
Okay, so we're looking at, let's say, sir, do you know, are those, or Dean, do you know, what are those 8-inch bricks?
I don't think they're 8-inch bricks. I guess that they might be 4 inches wide. Maybe they're slightly wider than that. but I don't know the ornamentation that's in the brickwork was designed to pick up and repeat the Art Deco pattern that's downtown, and so those were, I don't know specifically what they're referred to, but I can't tell you the exact distance from the edge of the concrete there to the ornamental Art Deco symbol there, but
What I'm struggling with
I'd just be guessing.
I don't want to approve something that's not, that's going to end up being a cramped space, but in the same respect, you know, I want to try to do what, something consistent with what's been previously done as far as the space or the depth, and also maintain these aesthetics here. I'm inclined to say that the fence shouldn't jut out more than that first line of bricks. That way it's not on the design, but it's also not butted up against the design. Would the applicant know if that's going to cause him to lose any of his capacity that he's anticipating there?
It will, if you go
Might step a
run the
little
numbers by
closer
code.
For the microphone.
I mean, it's not going to help by any means, you know?
Okay.
So,
Well, I understand that.
Well, plus if we're moving it 2 feet and we have 8 foot, and it wouldn't even be 8 foot clear because you have a 4 inch post, and with chairs up against the bar and the round tables, a handicapped person will not be able to do their maneuver as according to ADA standards. They'd have to kind of jog around and maneuver that way. So then-
I think that's the other thing that makes this application different than others that have been reviewed and approved, is that none of the others have had a fence that's got a 4 foot post, or 4 inch by 4 inch post and a 4 inch rail at the top. That's quite a bit wider from a structural fence standpoint than the other fences downtown. So this fence itself is going to occupy more space than the other fences that we've seen.
Or even if it was a black railing like what's typical downtown, that still inhibits the ADA standards.
Well, I think the capacity you're going for is great. I don't, in the same respect, I think that that's somewhat irrelevant to what we have to decide here. If you've got an ADA issue or an access issue, that's something for the applicant to address within the bounds of what we're able to approve. So I understand that concern, but we also have to take the other issues into account here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the aesthetics, the dollars we've put in to downtown, that sidewalk, the brick design, all is important, and I hate to mess with that again, but we're trying to maximize the space you can use, but also not compromise the aesthetics of what has been built downtown. Further comments, questions from the commission?
No, I don't have any more comments or questions. I am in support of Caton's idea if he made that a motion, but I'm not sure I'm in
Katie, you were doing really good till just the last little bit, and then all of a sudden it messed up. So I don't know.
I think,
I'll jump in there, and to the extent I can state this in something that's, I guess, quantifiable here, I would move to approve the cafe seating area on the condition that it extend no further than, the outside of that fence extend no further than the first line of bricks, and subject to the typical exception we put, that if there are any major changes as far as the design, that those be resubmitted to the board.
I would second that.
Would you like to amend that by chance, Caden, to include the fact that instead of using the more intrusive, I guess, anchor bits, using masonry screws?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
And I'm trying to pull up, Dean, I apologize, I'm trying to pull up your, the staff's.
yeah, the recommendations we have, like 3 through 10, are just repeated from the guidelines or code. The first two recommended conditions we had was about shifting the cafe area to the west, and then that we have an alternate anchoring system to the anchor bolts. And so you've kind of addressed those in your motion. So the other ones I don't think need to be repeated, because they're just kind of standard already in the code, and we just have them in there to reinforce them.
All right. We have the motion, and I don't know my parliamentary procedures well enough. Do we need another second on the amendment then?
We have to see if Katie agrees with the amendment of the motion, which she seconded, to include the alternate anchoring system.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
the seconder agrees with that.
Okay.
So it's to approve with the sidewalk cafe area being shifted so that the fence area is in line with the first line of bricks, and that there be an alternate anchoring system for the perimeter fence, and then the other ones are just standard conditions. Before we vote on the motion, staff would like to get clarification on the proposed use or non-use of umbrellas, because when we talk about accessibility, when we talk about patrons being able to move freely around, the presence or absence of umbrellas makes a difference. The Dagny's ice cream application included a proposal to have umbrellas, which this board approved. Starbucks proposal did not include umbrellas, which they put up, and I had them take down. And so it's important to clarify whether these tables as proposed are going to have tabletop umbrellas or not.
Okay. Gentlemen, would you like to address the umbrellas, either of you?
Well, it'd be a nice option to have. At lunchtime, when we're busy, that sun is beating down on the west side there.
So do the tables, were these going to be mounted in the table? Would they be-
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Would be, and
It wouldn't be an everyday use, but when it's
When
it's
you
boiling out
need it.
there,
Okay.
it's nice to have a little shade.
Dean, would it be helpful, I mean, do we need a,
No, all we need to know is that the use of umbrellas is part of their site plan. It wasn't.
do we need a height?
There
issue?
is a height in the code, and if the umbrellas become an obstruction, then they'll have to be elevated higher
Okay.
above the ground, or not used. But umbrellas do. In other words, umbrellas generally take up more space than the table unless these are sized. As we measured it, the tables have a 41-inch tabletop, so I'm not clear what the dimensions or diameter of the umbrellas is and how that relates to the size of the table.
And is there a restriction on the umbrella sticking out past the fence?
There is a restriction on the umbrella sticking out past the fence and
It has to
getting
be
into
maintained
the
in-
traveled way.
In the fence line, then, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think he's looking up the umbrella size a little bit there, but,
Well, these aren't, you can't go over 80 inches in height. That's the minimum per city standards. And they can hang over the railing.
right, okay. So they can't be below, okay, so they can't be below minimum of 80 inches, and so what you've proposed should be, okay, within that, okay,
Yeah, this umbrella size is based off the cut sheet you gave me.
okay. All right. So then, I guess we maybe need to amend another term or add a condition, perhaps, saying,
It doesn't need to be added as a condition.
Okay.
There just has to be a conscious decision that the umbrella is or is not part of the site plan. In the case of Starbucks, they didn't think of it till after they'd gone through and gotten all their approvals, and I said they could go back before the board and seek to add umbrellas, and they just decided to dispense with the umbrellas. So we're putting a point of emphasis that if there's a plan to have umbrellas, it has to be made known to the board so that you know that you're approving
Okay.
umbrellas as part of the site plan. It's not, doesn't have to be a separate condition or anything. It's just that the plan, the drawings that we got for Dagny's showed the tables with the umbrellas in the tables. This plan showed tables but didn't show umbrellas in the tables,
In
so
the
we're
tables,
just trying to clarify that.
so again, you'd be having umbrellas in the tables in accordance with city code, all the guidelines there, right? Okay. So do we need to word it as such, though, to add that in, or just
No,
say-
we have it, we
okay,
have it
gotcha.
in the minutes, and when
Okay, we
we
got it in the
report to the city commission, we'll report that the proposal includes
Okay.
tabletop umbrellas.
Okay,
We're not clear with that.
all right, so now we've made that clarification. I guess we're ready for a vote. All in favor of approving the motion as presented, with the conditions
Aye.
listed? Aye? Aye, okay, so
That
Aye for
motion
me.
passes 3-0.
0, yep.
And we'll get the minutes put together, and this is a recommendation that is made to the city commission, and the agreement between the business operator is between them and the mayor and city commission. So we'll report that onto them and let you guys know when this will go before the city commission.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I guess we're ready to move on down to 3.2, application, or item on the agenda, not
Yeah, the
application.
second item on today's special meeting agenda was an application that we received from Cassie Strait of Strite Sandblasting, and she's filed it on behalf of Bloom and Blossom. And the request is approval of a certificate of compatibility to allow installation of a new wall sign on a building that's located on the east side of South Fifth Street. And so that sign is, I think we have an elevation drawing for it. If you're familiar with I still call it the Jack Schwartz Building, even though Jack is no longer with us, but he had that as his financial services office, and it has a one-story addition that was used for office space and conference room, and that has now been purchased by Wells Investments, and they have leased this space out to Bloom and Blossom, and Cassie Strait's come up with this design for what could almost be referred to more as a mural than a wall sign, but it's going to be applied through the use of heat, and it would, as a result of that, be sealed, but could easily be removed if necessary, or if there's a change in tenants or there's a desire to modify it. And so we have looked at this, and we believe the wall sign is coordinated with the overall facade, and it's subordinate to that facade. The black lettering complements the building materials on the front facade, and the building will certainly be more recognizable and pedestrian-friendly with the addition of this sign. And so you could approve a certificate of compatibility for the sign. You could approve the application subject to any special conditions. You could postpone consideration of the application if you think you need additional information, or you could deny the application. So we would recommend that this be approved with the standard condition that if, should there be any changes to the design or materials approved by the board, that we would look at that and determine whether any additional review is needed by this board before we would issue a permit. So with that, I'd be open to any questions that board members might have.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commission?
I don't have any questions.
Caden, I'm thinking no.
No, I don't. Dean, I did see staff in your recommendation. I believe you wanted clarification, or staff wanted clarification on the colors and the height of it.
I think it's, I mean, we were interpreting it as black, but we just wanted to confirm that with the applicant as to whether we were correctly describing the colors, whether it was a bronze or dark brown or black. Sometimes we can't always correctly describe that, so if Cassie's with us, she could just clarify that, but
Yeah.
we just didn't want to misspeak.
Yes,
Hi, friends. Yeah, it is black and it does have a luster finish on it. So there won't be any, glossy shine or anything like that to it. But yeah, it's a standard black vinyl. And, Kaden, as far as the height goes, we plan on going approximately 4 foot up. You can see in this photo that there's a little bit of a wave in the concrete, so we're gonna have to play with that and play with the positioning to make sure that it's pleasing to the eye and make sure it doesn't look weird with that wave down there.
So
In regards to everything else being straight.
it's kind of centered on the exterior wall, but you're saying because it's not a perfectly even surface, you might have to adjust that either way to make it fit?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
yeah. But it won't be anything drastic. I mean, we're talking inches rather than feet.
Okay. If there are no other comments or questions from anyone, then I'll accept a motion.
I'll move to approve, subject to if there are any significant changes to the design or materials that are being approved today, that they be presented to the staff to determine whether additional review is needed.
Okay. Is there a second? Did we lose Katie? Katie, are you there?
She's still connected?
She's still connected, yes.
It shows you on mute, Katie, if you could unmute, if you're there. Well, crud. So,
Well, the other option would be for you to, if you wanted to second the motion, you
did she
could.
just disappear now?
Yeah, I wonder if she's having connection problems.
Maybe she, okay, so we can, what were you
Right.
say, Dean? I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say that the other option would be if you wanted to second,
I can second it?
you
is that-
can second that motion if you.
I'll be happy to second it.
So we have a motion and a second to approve this application with the condition that there's any changes to the design or materials that staff would be notified and either have an opportunity to bring that back before the board.
And is 2 a sufficient quorum to vote on this?
2 is a majority of the
Majority
quorum that's
of present?
present.
Okay,
So
great, yeah.
if we needed to say that she abstained, we can do that if
Okay, great,
necessary.
then. Sounds good to me. All right, I guess that, if there's no further discussion, we'll accept.
All those in favor of approving this application?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, motion carried, or approval granted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Oh,
So
and there's
we'll-
Katie's trying to get back in.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's
I
a,
was second.
well,
We've had a motion and a second by Chair Martins, but if, rather than listing you as abstaining, we can, we've had a motion to approve the certificate of compatibility with the condition if there's any modifications to the designer materials, those will be, staff will be notified, and we would determine whether any additional review is needed. So if you're in favor of that motion, if you just indicate so, then we'll indicate that it was approved by a 3-0 vote.
okay,
Yes. I approve.
Okay.
Okay.
So that carries 3-0.
are there any
We don't have
administrative
any
items?
administrative or discussion items for you. I guess just as an informational item, staff is working on a report to take the approval for Feast on the Fae to the City Commission on July the 12th, and the Feast on the Fae is scheduled for Saturday, September the 11th, and it's going to be in the 100 block of South Santa Fe. We tried to accommodate Cassie Strite's application on this agenda, and it looks like we will not have a need for or meet on July the 8th. So that's the next scheduled meeting of this board, and it looks to us like we'll have no agenda items and we'll have no need to meet on July the 8th. And then we'll just have to keep you informed on applications after that. But at this point, there will be no July 8th meeting of this
Okay.
board.
And for my clarification, we are still set at just the one meeting a month and holding special
Yeah,
meetings
the
thereafter.
second meeting would be considered special meetings. We may change that in the fall. We're still making efforts to address staffing and things like that, but we've got two staff planners extended over 4, sometimes 5 boards, and so we can't, if we commit to doing two meetings a month without waiting to see whether there's a need for it, then right now we feel comfortable committing to 1 a month.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So
Right
with
then.
that, I don't have anything further for you this evening.
All right then, well, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Katie moved and Caden
I'll
seconded?
second.
Yeah, Caden seconded, so all in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We may